Hello, my name is Ben Stern and I'm speaking on behalf of Save Our Saltaire, SOS. Now, this presentation is being recorded. I'm due to deliver it live at the Caroline Street Social Club. It was originally intended to be presented to the World Heritage UK 2025 Annual Conference in Saltaire on the 9th and 10th of October 2025 at a different venue. Um, we were asked to talk about World Heritage and engaging civic society, and this is because we were told that the audience there would like to hear how lobbying groups work with World Heritage managers and vice versa. And the reason why we're talking in a different venue is going to become clear as I work my way through the presentation. So before I start the presentation, let me talk about the SOS group. So our aim is to protect the World Heritage status of Saltaire. We're not pro or anti the council or college or students or development. We're an open group. We welcome all. We are predominantly local residents, but we have no affiliation or finances. And we primarily at the moment use Facebook to make information available. And just for the record, I don't like objecting personally. I've got other things to be doing. The structure of this presentation is going to walk through really the case study relating to development within Saltaire and some other areas as well. And I will end up with some do's and don'ts advice and some other sort of general comments, primarily for World Heritage managers and others. So let me tell you the story then. And the dates here are quite important. Those are in bold at the beginning of each of the short sentences. So in 2022, Shipley College were awarded just over £5 million to part-fund a new building, which is called the Community Arts Heritage and Future Technology Centre. And it's Towns Fund money. It's government funded via the Shipley Towns Fund. The site itself, which I've highlighted in yellow on these maps, is within the World Heritage boundary, which is outlined in red, and obviously within the buffer zone as well. And it's on the Caroline Street car park. So I'm likely to be calling this site the Caroline Street car park site throughout this talk. It's a highly visible location in Saltaire at the junctions of Victoria Road and Caroline Street. And obviously, as you can see, right in front of the mill. In June 2022, as part of gaining formal planning permission, the public were initially consulted by Shipley College about the proposal. And we don't have the exact details, but we understand there are about 200 responses to that. On the 16th of December 2022, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport informed World Heritage Centre, and as a result of that, on the 27th of February 23, there was a letter from the Director of World Heritage Centre and an ICOMOS technical review sent from the UNESCO's World Heritage Centre. Now, I've underlined this because this is really important. I will show you this document later on, but this document was not made available to the public and not made available to the planners when they were making their decision, and that's absolutely key. In October 2023, the public were formally consulted, and there was an overwhelming rejection of the proposal during the initial community consultation, as I talked about earlier, but also in the formal planning stage. There were 169 objections, 21 supporting. There were a few sort of undecided, if you like, but basically an 8-to-1 ratio of objections to supporting. And on the 29th of February 2024, the development received planning permission. This is a statement from a Bradford councillor on a BBC article, and this is saying that there are over 100 objections, but there are over 800 properties in Saltaire. So to say there's an overwhelming opposition isn't my interpretation of the situation. Well, I'm not sure we use that system for electing politicians and councillors, for example. So it's a very odd way of denying the 8-to-1 ratio. Now, concerned that the views of residents weren't being listened to, and a view that planning was one rule for them and one for us, and that the view of UNESCO had not been sought because we hadn't sight of the letter or ICOMOS technical review at that point, a small group of Saltaire residents submitted freedom of information requests. And this revealed a letter from the Director of World Heritage Centre and the ICOMOS technical review dated the 27th of February 2023, and notice this was before planning permission was awarded. And there's an image there just to aid memoir myself, but if you want to look at this, you can join us on the Facebook page and you can look at the completely unredacted version yourselves. So I'm going to highlight some areas within the letter and within the ICOMOS technical review. This is the original text with my highlights on top of them. Some of you will have encountered this before, so you feel free to skip ahead in the audio. So the ICOMOS technical review says, the way this whole area in front of the mill is now presented is not ideal. as a car park and temporary buildings impact adversely on views of the mill and overall on the intactness of the property. Putting a new building on this lot will not improve the situation as it will completely alter the original spatial plan. At the moment, the original use of this area as a green space could readily be reinstated, either as allotments or a small park. Once a major new building has been constructed, reinstatement as a green space will become almost impossible. Titus Salt's vision was to provide a healthy environment for his mill workers. As most of the green spaces in the setting of the property have been eroded, this makes it all the more essential to maintain the green spaces within the complex. It is difficult to understand how this site could be considered as acceptable for a large new building. Notice here that they're not commenting directly on the style or shape or design of the building. It is the presence of the building on this site. The compactness and intactness of Saltaire means that every detail of the original plan is important and needs to be sustained. The complex should be considered and protected as a single entity. Alcomas considered that the intactness would be compromised by the addition of this proposed new building. As proposed, it is likely that the centre would have a highly adverse impact on the integrity of the property and its outstanding universal value, through changing the original plan and interrupting its legibility and removing part of it designated green space. A location is needed that does not impact adversely on the overall plan of the property and its visual and functioning interlinkages. Please note that Alcomas International has concluded that the community centre should be reconsidered and, if it proves not possible to house it in an existing structure, be relocated outside the property. Now, SOS are very, very concerned about these statements because they're very, very serious, and very similar statements were made when Liverpool lost its World Heritage status. So SOS made these documents available to the public, and there's a direct link via our Facebook site. Now, this Alcomas report was hidden. We have an email from the 17th of April 2023. This is from Shipley College to Shipley Town Council. And it says that any pre-application advice/guidance is confidential, and this is a key point. We wouldn't want the Alcomas' inaccurate response getting out into the public domain where it will develop a life of its own, as it has. This will inevitably delay the project, and we're not sure for how long as present. Please, could you keep this confidential between yourself and as fewer people as possible? In the 13th of October 2023, Historic England to Bradford Council stated, we advise that the authority should ensure that the views of UNESCO and its heritage advisors, Alcomas, are considered in the decision-making processes for this proposal. And that advice was not followed because clearly this was not made available to the planners or to the public. Now, if you are presented with a report which doesn't fit your views, then you must not hide it. The sensible, logical, ethical thing to do is to make it public and also respond in a logical argument way to counter what you might consider to be inaccuracies inside it. By hiding it, you're making the situation worse. During the planning meeting on the 29th of February 2024, the existence of communications from UNESCO were denied. So the chair was trying to ascertain what attempts had been made to contact UNESCO, and in response it was stated that the statutory consultee on the application was English Heritage, who had responded, and they had made numerous attempts to contact UNESCO together with a heritage officer, but to no avail. However, we know that those documents were available. And I'm just going to leave it like this with this final line saying that withholding necessary documents from a planning application is illegal. As part of SOS's campaign, we made this available, and articles relating to this were published in the Yorkshire Post, which are on the next slide. Bradford Council were emailed via Historic England, and Historic England here are correcting a press release which Bradford Council was attempting to release in response to the Yorkshire Post article. And Historic England saying that they recommended in its letter of advice to the local planning authority that Alcomas' views were taken into account, having already received and shared its report on the proposals which had not substantially changed since the application stage. The argument in this email is that the original plans that UNESCO had sight of had changed, and therefore they had answered their questions. However, Historic England is saying here that they had not substantially changed, and If you go back to the report, it is talking about a building. It is not talking about design aspects of that particular building. So the hidden ICOMOS technical review. So it was not made available when the public or the planners were making their decision to improve. SOS is certain that councils would have come to a different decision and that local opposition would have been substantially greater if all had been properly informed of the full risks and consequences. It is very concerning, this lack of transparency and democratic accountability. This denies the viewpoints of the independent expert ICOMOS reviewers, and I'll talk about the role of UNESCO and ICOMOS later on. As the comments of the ICOMOS report are very critical of the proposal, and given the quotes earlier, one could argue that this report was deliberately hidden from public scrutiny. And this makes people extremely angry. In fact, angry is probably the wrong word there. They're furious. And there are a number of reasons. These are some of them. Information's been kept from them, the ICOMOS report. Their voices are not being heard, the 8-to-1, and a number of other issues as well. And there does appear to be double standards regarding planning permission and listed building consent and the associated costs. So householders, for example, have to pay for replacement windows and doors and roofs in certain styles, whereas new buildings seem to just get pushed through the system. So in response to the ICOMOS report, we formed SOS. And the things that we've been doing is raising public awareness via media stories, as you've already seen, by making documentation available to the public. We have a petition to review the planning permission, over 2,500 last month. That petition, we were unable to deliver it. We were denied the ability to present that petition. So again, denied our voice. Letter writing campaigns, and some of you may well have received some of our letters from UNESCO. Silence, and that's another problem. We also tried to discuss alternative locations. Again, very limited and no response. And we continued with further freedom of information requests. Now this talk is split into a variety of different sort of sections. I've ended sort of one here, and to divide them up, I've included some images and some comments from SOS members and comments from the SOS Facebook page. I'm not going to read through all of these, but there's currently a debate ongoing about lampposts, about the particular style, about the tops, looking Victorian or looking more designer, the old ones and new LED ones. I'm not going to read through the text here, but it serves as a sort of break between the different sections, but it also serves for the SOS community to add some of their comments. And if you want to see further comments, please just join us on Facebook and you can see their comments too. It's largely a constructive group. So as part of SOS, we were invited to attend a World Heritage Watch UNESCO Dialogue Forum on the 12th and 13th of May 2025. This group, they're a network which supports UNESCO in obtaining complete and accurate information about the situation of World Heritage sites, and information not just that provided by the state parties. They help local people protect their sites, and they alert the public about threats to the common heritage of humanity. And as I said, SOS invited us to submit a paper and to present our case. And for the very first time, we actually had an answer from UNESCO, because UNESCO representatives were present at that meeting, and I was able to speak to them. And they said that the World Heritage status of Saltaire is currently not at risk. This is the very first time that we'd heard this, and it's appalling that we had to wait this amount of time to formally hear from UNESCO themselves. Now, other people had their own views, but ultimately it's UNESCO who can say whether Saltaire is at risk or not. And they also said that Saltaire would not be put on any at-risk list, and they don't have current plans to do so. However, we know that UNESCO are hugely overworked. They've got a gigantic casebook, and they just work extremely slowly. And one of the things I really want to highlight here, that it was SOS who sought, achieved, and publicised this information. We were the first to get this to the public. Now, there are some things just to clarify with our meeting with UNESCO, and that UNESCO did not say that they approved the development. They stressed in their comments that the situation is not ideal, and given that they were faced with the knowledge that planning consent for the development had already been approved prior to their deliberations, they were in a catch-22 situation. UNESCO shared with the forum the concern that the Arcomas report was not made available to either the planning committee or the public prior to planning permission being granted, and therefore it seems rather odd that they said Saltaire is not at risk, given that planning permission has already been given, but we know that that planning consent is problematic. UNESCO also stated that they were aware that trust between the community, Bradford Council and Shipley College had broken down, and that's of concern to them and of us as well. We had a follow-up session with other groups who were present, and these were global but also UK-based groups that are experiencing similar issues in heritage sites around the UK. What came across from our discussions was that the forum was actually quite a useful exercise, but there was an overwhelming sense of frustration and disappointment. It's not necessarily the fault of UNESCO, but they've got limited resources and an expanding global caseload. They're increasingly reliant on state parties to do the right thing. And, well, you've just heard some of the things that I've just said. The UK is complacent in protecting World Heritage Sites, highlighting a need for stricter UNESCO involvement and stronger domestic legislation. And other UK representatives shared similar issues, emphasising the lack of UNESCO intervention due to insufficient local planning protection. And we are engaging further with local groups to see how we can influence and to inform about developments in planning. There's a all-party parliamentary group which is being formed, hopefully listening in the audience right now, and we'd love to contact you. Again, another boundary between different sections of my talk. Cars are a big issue in Saltaire. My images here, not pointing at individual cars or households, but you can see the issue of parking on pavements, parking right close to doorways. I don't think personally that at the moment there is a solution for cars within Saltaire. It's one of the problems, as I'll come and talk about later on, but it is a big issue with residents and poor driving, too many cars, visitors. It's an issue that I don't think we can solve immediately, but it's something people are concerned about on all sides of the debate. Now, the campaign then moved on to other issues, and one of these was still related to the site, because the site is described as open space land. And although it's not directly World Heritage, this open space land is something that UNESCO mentioned about the original thing that Titus Salt was wanting, about open and green spaces. But also it's currently a car park. And as a car park, if that was denied, then the vehicles will be parked elsewhere. And I've already shown you a slide about some of the issues that occur with overuse of cars within the village. So SOS revealed that the council are selling the land for £1. This is clearly under the value of the property. And at the same time, Bradford Council is raising council tax and reducing services. And in addition to that, but to avoid bankruptcy, Bradford Council is receiving a government emergency funding boost of several £100 million over the next 2 years. So let me just then describe what this open space land is. It's community land. So this is, if it's disposed of, it will be transferred into private ownership and we'll never get it back. It's one of the highest demand car parks in the Bradford district and therefore a high revenue raising asset. The removal of car parking spaces disadvantages local businesses and result in more problem on-street parking. The removal of open space access. The car park is not just used for parking cars, it's used for market stalls, Veg on the Edge, Saltaire Festival, events, all sorts of other activities as the part of the community. The transfer of this land to Shipley College does not guarantee access to the public, and the property could be sold in the future and new owners could further deny access. As part of the proposed transfer of the open space land to Shipley College, it was required that there be a public consultation. We've yet to hear the outcome of this, although we know of many substantial objections which were put in. Do I expect the objections to be considered fairly? Well, we'll wait and see. One of the problems with this process is that no criteria were published about how these are going to be judged against. We repeatedly asked for these but received none. And there's a problem with the way that this was set up and no extension to the time limited deadline, which I'll talk about later on. So some further comments. Again, I'm not going to read through these, but this is a toilet block within the car park, so it serves more than just a car park. That's been closed for a while and creates significant issues with visitors, particularly those going on tour groups around the site. And the mill has toilets, yes, but that's not open um, all the time during the week. So UNESCO and ICOMOS, what are they good for? If developers can dismiss the views of ICOMOS on UNESCO because they stand in the way of their desired outcomes, where are the effective safeguards to protect World Heritage status? Where's the safeguard from the ICOMOS report being not presented to the planners? We have a growing concern that pick and mix approach to the views of ICOMOS and UNESCO will be applied to further developments. We're thinking long term, not just what's happened at the Caroline Street car park site. One wonders what's the function of ICOMOS and UNESCO if the views can be disregarded and hidden from the public because they don't adhere to the ambitions of the developers. The hidden is the problem here. If the developers have differing views and different interpretations and corrections to make, that's absolutely fine, but that needs to be done in the public domain where intellectual arguments can be made rather than hiding documentation. Other extensive developments have taken place within the buffer zone. So things like the Riverside developments, the co-op, the Jonathan Silver building, and ICOMOS themselves talk about one of these sites, and they're very concerned because it was not mentioned to them. They came across it in the media. So given that Bradford Council are guardians of the Saltaire World Heritage Site on behalf of the State Party, it is concerning that all of these developments have been given the green light and Bradford Council have failed to inform the World Heritage Centre. Now, yes, you do not want to inform the World Heritage Centre about every planning permission for changing a window or something like that, but new buildings are a significant development. We're also concerned about the slow deterioration of Saltaire, about decaying ironwork, about cracked flagstones, and some of this is related to other issues. So this one here is a nice example of the lamppost, which has moved from the curbside to the wall, and now vehicles can park on there. And that stone, which is over a meter in its dimensions, is now cracked. That's probably an original stone, and that's damaged and deteriorated. So why am I giving this talk, recorded in this instance, but also in the Caroline Street Social Club? Well, SOS were invited to give a 20-minute presentation to the World Heritage UK 2025 Annual Conference. The theme of the conference is engaging with World Heritage, and SOS were invited, as we were told, that the audience would like to hear from lobbying groups like SOS. I'm not sure if I'd call ourselves a lobbying group, we're a whole mixture of different things, but anyway, on how they might like to work with World Heritage managers and vice versa. SOS have multiple emails confirming and thanking us for being prepared to speak at the conference. We've communicated with the organisers about the general content of the talk with no objections at any stage. We have copies of both the earlier and current versions of the conference programme. And the reason why I'm doing this is that ours was the only presentation to be removed, whilst 2 new presentations have been added. Now, SOS know why. We know the who and we know the reason, but that was part of an off-the-record discussion. So for the moment, I can't give any further information, but I'm sure you can imagine. Some further comments by Saltaire residents before I get on to the do's and don'ts. So here's the do's and don'ts. So if you are a politician, if you are working in World Heritage, if you are UNESCO or ICOMOS, please respond to us. You may not agree with what we're saying, but please acknowledge our letters and emails. It's very simple, just to send an email saying thank you for your inquiry. I will get back to you, or I disagree with you. Please respond in a reasonable time frame. One of the issues that we couldn't formally object to the planning objections is that our freedom of information request took too long within the formal period at which we can object to planning permissions. Listen to us. What we say may make you uncomfortable, but don't cancel us, as you have seen. Breakdown of trust is of concern to UNESCO, and if you don't listen to us, if you don't respond to us, we will speak to these people, as we will do as part of civic society. Don't dismiss us. Go back to something like slide 4. When 8 to 1 objects, something is very wrong with what you're wanting to do, or or how you are communicating what you want to do. Politics is about compromise, making arguments and meeting people's needs, not forcing through your plans. The drivers for this must be extremely strong. There is a very serious concern here. By not responding to us, by listening to us, by dismissing us, you are endangering further engagement. People will not complete your surveys or your questionnaires or your public consultation, or even vote if they feel that their views are not being held. And ultimately, this puts democracy at risk. And then, this is laughable really, but please get the process right. The planning portal for objections for 10 days had an incorrect email address, which bounced emails back to junk email boxes, and the senders were often not aware that their objection had not been sent. That was for 10 days on a time-limited process, and that was not further extended. Ensure that language filters do not block certain Saltaire street names. Fanny Street in Saltaire, there must be a whole series of residents on there that cannot use their home address in communications with Bradford Council. Come on, we as SOS are the amateurs here. You're supposed to be the professionals. Further comments. So SOS, we're evolving, we're changing as everything does. SOS is a proud group of residents and supporters. Many see ourselves as custodians of the World Heritage Site for humanity. There is a complex network of individuals using the World Heritage Site. There are visitors, local and international. There are businesses. There are residents who are renting and are owning. There are students. There are people who work here. There are businesses employing large or small numbers. And sometimes they have differing and clashing needs. We're well aware of that, car parking being exactly one of those issues. We appreciate the complexities of issues facing these heritage sites and its development, clearly, mostly what I've been focusing on here. Climate change and over-tourism, I suppose we could link the car issue with that as well. We're also concerned about the slow erosion of our heritage. So flagstones, lampposts, fibre boxes, incorrect materials. Now, I know the council is developing some guidance about the installation of these fibre boxes, but you're too slow. Most of the houses already have them. They've already drilled through the walls. So by the time you get processes in, the boxes will already be out there. We know Saltaire. We're highly resourceful. We have lots of experience and we are independent. We can ask questions which some of you in official positions may not be able to, and we will be happy to ask those questions. You can communicate with us in a number of different ways. I'll show you our email address at the end. That could be a formal email or it could be something more private. It's entirely up to you. We're also happy to discuss things off the record. We really, really want to be that critical friend. And for that, you have to trust us and we have to trust you. There has to be this dialogue, and we're looking for that. Despite being, how shall I say it, let down, we still want to be that critical friend. We want to be positive for the future. We will continue to push for the protection of World Heritage status for Saltaire. We will continue to make information publicly available and to make decision making transparent. As I talked about in one of the earlier slides, with other UK World Heritage Site representatives, it's agreed, this is civil society, it was agreed that we should form a UK alliance with a view to sharing information, providing support and lobbying Parliament to implement stricter UK planning law to protect our World Heritage Sites. When we met with them, the director of the World Heritage Centre UNESCO stated they appreciate the roles of small groups such as ours, and we will continue making some people's lives difficult, although not deliberately, of course. Is a special place. Incorrect materials. I'm not going to really talk about these slides here. I'm getting short of time, so I'll go on to my final slide. So thank you for listening. I'm sorry if that made some of you uncomfortable, but you won't learn anything if you don't listen to unwelcome messages. And if you're hearing this in time and are going to the next day of the conference, feel free to ask unwelcome messages and ask them why SOS were not invited to the session. Feel free as well to join us on Saltaire. You can scan the QR code or just search for Save Our Saltaire and we'll let you in. Okay, I obviously can't answer questions as part of an online thing, but you can do that on Facebook if you were to join us. Okay, thank you very much, and hopefully you found that useful.